Let's get some more analysis. We're joined here in the studio by the Editorial Director of Le Monde newspaper, Sylvie Kauffmann. A very warm welcome to you. Thank you for coming to see us. Your newspaper, Le Monde, says on page 2 today, une élection sans triomphe, or a victory without triumph for President Macron. Why is that?
Yes, that sounds paradoxical, since he got this quite clear victory with a wide margin, 58.5%. That's not a small feat, you would say. But he himself was not triumphant last night in his victory rally. He was definitely not in a triumphant mood. He was even somber, I think, in his comments. So I think that headline sums up the mood of the country, probably. You know, French voters choose clearly to re-elect Emmanuel Macron, to, you know, as he said, trust him for 5 more years. But the first round taught a lot of lessons, and, you know, this... the fact that more than 50% of people who voted in the first round choose populist candidates, so that the protest vote in the first round was the majority vote in a way, plus the low turnout, which is not, if you take the European political scene, it's not such a low turnout, right?
It's just low in the context of France.
It's low in the context of a presidential elections in France. Usually, yeah, we have this high turnout in presidential elections, and this is the second lowest in the history of Fifth Republic. So, you know, all in all, this is why we didn't feel to choose a triumphant headline.
I mean, when you look at President Macron's first term, there were things that obviously came from out of the blue, not least the pandemic. I mean, in particular, the pandemic, and then the war in Ukraine. And when you look at how France has rebounded, at least from the pandemic, and the economy looks pretty strong by international standards. Unemployment is down now to the lowest level in about 13 years. In an election, the economy is usually at the forefront of everybody's mind. Why wasn't it?
It is.
Why didn't he get more credit?
Well, for 2 reasons. First, he hasn't campaigned. You know, he was full-time on the war in Ukraine. He was, you know, totally, and which for understandable reasons, but he chose to work as president and not as a candidate, and he thought he could do without campaigning, and I think that was a mistake. Of course, he had to do all this, you know, the war. That was the unplanned event, right? The war in Ukraine, and of course it took 100% of his time and his energy. But that means that he didn't have time to campaign on what you're describing as an achievement to the economy, you know, whatever it takes during the COVID-19 crisis, and this huge amount of money, public money poured into the economy, and the fact that there were no people could keep their jobs, and the employment is actually better. That's true. All this is true, but I think he didn't have time to make the argument. While Marine Le Pen was very actively campaigning, she had a very effective campaign on the cost of living, which is also the economy, and it is also true that the cost of living was a very strong issue for voters because of the war in Ukraine, the energy prices were rising, and so people could feel the effect on their wallets. And they could see the petrol prices going up for their car. So, you know, I think all in all, she did campaign. She had a very good campaign, and he didn't campaign, except for maybe the last week before the first round and the 2 weeks between the 2 rounds.
Sure, and she came across as being closer to the French people.
Which is his weak point.
Which is his weak point. But
Yeah.
do the French people want a president that's one of the people? I thought they didn't want them. They wanted someone who's more presidential and perhaps a bit more, in that office, a bit more presidential.
When François Hollande wanted to be the normal president, they didn't like it either. That's a problem with the French. They elect presidents, and after a year or two, they don't like him or her. I mean, until now, it's been him. But still, they have re-elected this one, even though there's quite a high degree of dislike, of personal dislike for him, and that's one of his weaknesses. But you see, I think this polarization that we have in France is not an uncommon feature in our Western societies. You can see it, you can see it in the United States, of course. You can see it in other European countries. So France is a complex society, but I don't think it's such an exception in the European Union. The problem is that we have, what is the exception is our political system and our, this very strong president with a lot of power, a parliament which is weak, in fact, which has, but which have different, will have legislative elections in 2 months' time, and then the government will be issued from that parliament. So it's a complicated situation. Yeah.
But at least it's a system that delivers results, and clear ones at that.
It does.
Thank you very much. I'm told we're having to move on now, but thank you very much for speaking to us.
My
the
pleasure.
Editorial Director of Le Monde, Sylvie Kauffmann. Thank you very much indeed.
Welcome.